Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I am Zeckthar,
And I'm Yuksen.
and we are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We have seen the rise and fall of many empires, yet this month we will be speaking of those crazy human space vikings, known as Space Wolves.
Outstanding, Zeckthar. They are one of my favorite units of Space Marines, those strange humans who are the sons of Leman Russ.
Right you are, Yuksen. Well, let's get into it. This week, brother, I figured we could let the stories of the venerable Space Wolves simply flow. This is where we gush about the greatness of the Sons of Russ. I think I will let you start. What are your favorite stories, attributes of the Space Wolves? No, wait. I do have a confession to make.
What?
Unfortunately, brother, that fine mead that you've been drinking from Fenris is actually from Terran 42.
What?
Yep, unfortunately, I got the labels mixed up on our shipping, and...
Again?
Yeah, again. I left it sadly to our little robot lackeys to acquire the best alcohol from Fenris. I thought this better than using my own time to sneak into the Fang and acquire such vintages.
You said Bob, didn't you?
Well, of course I said Bob. He's our best. Well, he's one of the best. Okay, he normally gathers the stuff that we need.
Last time you sent Bob to fetch us an orc rocket, he brought us back a black hole lamp.
Yeah, that is true. But it did work out in the end, right?
Fair enough. I will say I have gone better sleep with the lamp sucking all the light from my room.
Yes, well, well, I hate to say it, but the substance you have been drinking is from Terran 42, from a brewery known as Black Mountain Cider plus mead.
Well, whatever they are doing it right. But are you telling me through this whole Vox, I've been drinking what I thought was the same thing Space Wolves drink? Instead, I've been drinking fine Terran 42 mead?
I hate to say it, yeah. But don't worry, I have actually procured through our bot BILL.
You mean Bill?
Yeah. Anyways, I have actual Space Wolf Ale here. Now, before this, I pour this, Yuksen, I should add, there's an interesting thing about this Fenrisian Ale. I mean, it's one of the few toxins that can actually get a Space Marine drunk. You know how we were talking earlier, anyways, about Lucas the Jackal Wolf?
Yeah.
And it was one of his stories. It was the one where he
sank all those people into the ocean.
Yeah, but they talked about how he was hammered. And we both kind of were puzzled about that because we were like, wait a minute. And I thought Space Wolves, thanks to their gene seeds, couldn't actually get drunk. Well, the Space Wolves, because they love their ale so much, figured out a way to get around that. It's made from plants of Fenris, hence the name Fenrisian Ale. It's also known as Mjord. It is, it's actually so potent of an alcohol that someone other than a Marine could die from drinking one glass of the substance. Now, I mean, Space Wolves are quite generous anyways during their time of feasting and have been known to add an antitoxin to the ale so normal people can get around the taste of the fine substance. How they got around the gene seed, the oolitic kidney, which, as you remember anyways from your chronicling last week, brother, it's supposed to take like toxins out of the body, and it kills the toxins before it can get into anything, right? These plants from Fenris, what they do is that they actually like numb the kidney so it actually doesn't work long enough for the alcohol to actually get through and allows the Space Wolf to actually get hammered if they so choose. Would you like to sample some of this fine ale, Yuksen?
Sure.
All right, here you go. Who should we toast to? Maybe Bill?
Hopefully.
Let's toast to Bill. He actually got it for us. Well, what do you think?
Not bad.
We'll see. Also, I might add that Space Wolves are a pretty carnivorous bunch. They tend to eat more meat than anything else, but I mean, that's pretty much what they eat. they don't eat a whole lot else other than like fine roasts, and I'm sure that there's some bread involved in there somewhere, but they stay away from those terrible things known as vegetables. Very much like you do, Yuksen. But I think enough fun with the festivities and the drink and the food. So go ahead, Yuksen. What would you like to talk about?
Well, how about a little bit about the formations that they have?
The what?
The different units that they have.
Oh, yeah.
Organization, basically. Like,
sure.
Let's first start off with when you got their first recruits. These are generally very hot-headed, bloodthirsty, wanting to die for honor.
You are speaking
the gung-hos,
right?
What? I
said you are speaking about the blood claws, right?
Yes.
Okay. Carry on.
So they are actually put in, like you said, the blood claw groups, and they are obviously more led towards the front. And actually, oddly enough, one of the reasons why they're put in these groups instead of like most Space Marine chapters, what they'll do is with the new fresh blood is they'll put them in like training cages and stuff like that where they fight machines. Whereas Space Wolves are like, rarely will they come across the autonomous bot that they're going to face against. So we're going to throw them against flesh and blood enemies instead.
Well, don't they also have them while they're being initiated? They're supposed to go out on a hunt, right?
Yes, but this is more like we are throwing you into actual battle.
Well, yeah.
We aren't having you hunt like creatures. We are having you fight foes, which may be creatures, but
like Tyranids.
Basically, they go from there, and then some of the more reckless and troublesomes get rewarded. Put this in quotations of rewarded into joining the group called the Skyclaws, which are basically the ones that get their jetpacks strapped onto their backs.
Oh, the jump pack ones.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're like high mobile shock troopers.
Yeah. Except for it's
sounds like you got a problem with the jump packs. Honestly, I think they were
this way
better than
you have
those ones.
You have, you're flying on land and everything, and then you have, yes, you're rewarded. You get these jetpacks. You're more likely to die violently, and well, you're reckless, so it makes sense that you'll be in this position.
What's troublesome about jump packs? Now, I would understand, anyways, your thought process on it, anyways, if they gave them like the jump packs that the orcs use, but those are ridiculous. They sometimes strap torpedoes to their back, like live torpedoes to their back, anyway, so they can fly around. But I thought the jump packs were actually pretty stable for the Empire.
Either way, you're strapping rockets onto your back.
Okay.
And you're sent to jump forward. Okay. So, yes, they may be safer than orc rockets, but you're flying at like 1,000 miles per hour. Maybe not that much, but still a ridiculous amount of speed. But all of a sudden, you need to stop. Can you stop?
Yes.
Not fast enough.
No. How you stop is you swing your legs back up anyways, and you hit the rockets so that they slows you down.
No. These are strapped to your back.
Well, no, I got that.
There is no swinging your legs forwards to stop yourself.
You don't think you could? I think
no, not in that.
I think we got a different concept, anyways, of how jump packs work.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, anyways, at jump pack. Well, first off, the one thing I don't understand about jump packs, anyways, is how they actually can fly around in them. I mean, do they have? Oh, so you're saying, anyways, that they really don't have any like stabilizers attached to them? It's just literally like they aim for this spot and then they jump, and then as they're coming back down, they actually like use the jets to slow down
and hopefully steer it. It's less of flying so much as jumping very long distances. Hence, the name jump pack.
So this isn't flying. This is falling with
It
style.
allows you to fly, kinda.
So it really is
And
just
so when you're
straight up
going to land, you hope you'll be landing on something solid, right?
Yuksen. So this is just straight up, anyways, just a jump pack. It's not like a
Yeah.
jet pack. It's a jump
No,
pack.
it's
So
a
the
jump pack.
concept is that we look like, let's say we're looking down like a Terran 42 football field, right? And you want to
Right.
get to the other end zone. So what you do is you just hit this button anyways, you launch yourself up, and as you're coming back down, you use the jets anyways to slow your descent, and then you land on the other side, right?
Yeah. And you might be able to adjust a little bit one way or the other.
How? How would you adjust? There's
I-
no way to adjust. I mean, I guess you could hold your arms out, maybe flap them a bit.
Yeah.
But if you gotta actually use it,
Aerodynamics.
yeah, think aerodynamics. Okay, actually, no. I guess you could. I guess you could technically use a bolter, right? So if you need to move to the left, you could shoot any your bolter to one side, so you slowly start going in the opposite direction. I don't know if they really thought this through, but anyways,
We're
Is
not
that-
going the flying tank right way here.
but you can fly a tank. It's been done. Anyways, sorry, we're getting a little bit far afield here, but is that the only specialized unit that the Blood Claws have?
The other one that generally they'll be put into is what they call the Swift Claw biker packs.
Ooh, so they ride
Wait.
motorcycles?
Yes, exactly.
Are they like big old Harleys?
And no.
No.
Generally, Harleys do not have bolters strapped onto the front of them.
Okay, so I do have a question. If you're on a motorcycle, how do the bolters work?
I believe they're attached to a firing mechanism on the actual handle.
Well, I'm thinking anyways that bike's got to be pretty big though, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, okay. Well, first off, does it have two wheels? I thought they had four, so it's more like a quad, but they're like
It
like,
depends on what vehicle it is. Most of them will have like two, but then they'll have some that like okay, you have a support weapon.
uh-huh.
In that case, they have additional one because you have somebody on the side.
Okay, so you're saying they can attach a sidecar to it?
Basically, yeah. What they
Okay.
aren't sidecars; they're basically turrets. But yes.
Okay. But yeah, all right. Fair enough.
Which kind of makes sense because, pretty much the way that they have these things built, the only direction you can fire a bolter, the ones that are attached to the bike, is forwards.
I just think it's funny, anyways, that they put these guys on it, anyways, and they're like literally the most reckless units that you can find in the Space Wolves. Let's strap them onto a bike with bolters and wish them the best of luck.
Oh.
I don't know. I would probably put Long Fangs on there just because I've got the picture of the old dude, anyways, on a bike with the giant hanging bars, with the shades, rolling down the road, blasting everything in his way. That's just me. Obviously, the Space Wolves have thought about this, and that's why they use Blood Claws.
Yeah.
But anyways, I kind of got ahead of you. I'm sorry, anyways, talking about Long Fangs. But who's next, anyways, on these unit formations?
Next, I'd like to actually talk briefly about the Scouts, because one of the things that, we've mentioned before that the Space Wolves don't really necessarily follow the Space Marines Codex Astartes.
Yeah.
And one of the things is, in like all of their chapters, the Scouts were originally the newbies instead of, in case of the Space Wolves, it's the Blood Claws, it was the Scouts.
Right. And what's the job of the Scout? Is they just exactly what they sound like? They're Scouts?
Pretty much.
Do they move singular or do they move in packs?
They move in small groups.
Okay.
So
I've always wondered this, by the way, about Scouts for the Space Marines. How do they actually scout? Well, no, it's like, okay, like the Raven Guard. The Raven Guard are known anyways for being like this really sneaky group of Space Marines, right?
Right.
how is a 7.5 foot tall guy in giant power armor sneaky?
Well, actually, first of all, scouts don't wear power armor.
Oh, well, that makes it a little bit easier, but they're still 7.5 feet tall and weigh like 400 pounds of solid bone and muscle. How does that guy hide?
It's Warhammer 40K. We don't care.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
They can. That's all that matters.
I can just see this guy anyways with this like little tree, like sneaking forward going, I'm a tree, I'm a tree, I'm a tree.
Wait, I'm a tree that can talk.
No,
I'm a talking tree.
Are you the singing bush? That was a good movie. Anyways, sorry, go ahead.
So in comparison, they actually have some more veterans that actually do the role of scouts instead. And these are more of the people that you would find, for example, on Terran 42. If you're to go into the mountains, it'd be this guy that, sure, I guess he kind of would hang out with people, but he's more wanting to be out on the hunt and forage and stuff.
Right. Kind of a loner.
These guys and they put them together instead and use them as scouts.
So, and I think the term you're referring to from Terran 42 is the mountain men from the western parts of the United States, correct? In Canada.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Well, who's after the scouts? Which,
go ahead.
It makes sense for having those sort of peoples for scouts, since that's basically their whole idea is
right
out for the hunt.
I've honestly
have to track and
Yeah. I've honestly always thought of the scouts more like for Terran 42, more like a force recon. I mean, that's their design. There's or Green Berets, where they're sent out anyways behind enemy lines, anyways to scout, cause disruption, that kind of thing.
No, those are commandos.
What? No, we're not talking about the orcs. We're talking about the space wolves. Where have you been, Yuksen?
Okay, so moving away from scouts. Okay, so now we hit the Grey Hunters. The Grey Hunters are what the hopeful Blood Claws end up becoming.
Yeah, if they survive that long.
Or if they don't act like Lucas.
Right. Well, okay, Lucas is like a weird exception. I mean, he's really weird. Or actually like Ragnar Blackmane. He never was a Grey Hunter, right?
I'm not so sure about that. I think he
no. I'm pretty sure about that. He never became a Grey Hunter.
From maybe being a Blood Claw to Wolfguard for some reason.
No, he went from the Blood Claws into the Wolf Blade. As we discussed a couple weeks ago. And then after that, anyways, because he gained so much reputation of being awesome, that they moved him into being a Wolf Lord. He's one of the 13 Wolf Lords.
Or 12.
Technically, there's 13, but but the 13th one, we'll talk about the 13th one later. They're kind of their own entity. Yeah. But yeah, anyways, the Grey Hunters, they're kind of like the main bulk force, right?
The Grey Hunters are basically what, in regular chapters, it's what the scouts end up going into. It's what the Blood Claws end up becoming. The ones that, actually survive, right, are able to temper themselves.
Yeah, so they're like the main force of the
they're your standard troop.
Gotcha.
Then we go to the Long Fangs.
Ah, yes.
Yes. The fearsome Santas. No.
Yes. They do kind of
look like Santas weighed like 300 pounds of solid muscle with no fat.
And had giant tusks.
Yeah, giant tusks. But they do have white hair. Some of them do.
Yeah. And rosy cheeks, probably. Oh, but they don't have a bowl full of jelly anyways for their stomach. They are quite beefy. Sorry, go ahead.
The Long Fangs are generally put in the place of the heavy artillery, heavy support. And the reason behind this is because they've been around long enough that they've been able to temper that Canis Helix and Bloodlust enough that they are able to actually be patient, make good, solid tactical judgment. They're able to, let's put it this way, think clearly past, you know, the general urge to just let loose.
Murder.
Yes, murder.
Murder.
Just murder.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the long fangs I think we would get along with better than probably any of the rest of these space wolves.
Yeah.
Because they're older and wiser. But honestly, so you've got this unit anyways of old and wise space wolves. But then there's this other group, anyways, that goes kind of the polar opposite, right?
Yeah. Well, now we reach. Well, you mentioned before in the prior Vox those who fall to the Wolfen during the trials.
Yes.
How they're basically, yeah, they're either
based
sometimes
on
they're actually caught by tribesmen.
based on the name, anyways, is based on one of the people that followed Lehman Russ, who turned into the original Wolfen, hence the name Wolfen.
So the Wolfen, the later when they have become Space Marines, some of them fall to the curse of the Wolfen, and then they're able to recover, like Ragnar has done several times. But there are those who fall for it and do not recover from it, so that they actually start to deform somewhat, and they become to the point where they're on that fine edge of going berserk.
Right.
But the Space Wolves still see them as battle brothers, so they still keep them instead of, like, throwing them out or whatever they would do with them.
I'm sure the Inquisition just loves that.
Yeah. They will, though, under circumstances, obviously release these monsters. Let's just call them monsters because that's basically what they've become. Loose onto the battlefield, and they just slaughter. That's basically all they do. In fact, there's a conversation given by somebody. I can locate it here.
I thought you already located this stuff.
I did, and then the bookmark apparently came out.
Oh. Well, carry on looking through your tomes.
There it is.
So I do have a question for you. Oh, you found it. Okay. Before you read this, anyways, I do have a question for you. How I made a joke, anyways, about the Inquisition. How is it that the Inquisition, anyways, hasn't just like completely destroyed the Wolfen?
Because they stay away from the Space Wolves.
Well, good point.
Because they had that whole thing where they kind of made somewhat of an agreement
during the months of shame, which I will be talking about in our little mini Vox later on this week. Stay tuned. Sorry, carry on, Yuksen. What did this person say? What's that?
Let's plug that in.
Yeah, why not?
So, anyways, this is a story told to, and he will be brought up later, Bolve.
Oh, yes. Bolve the Berserker.
So, Bolve paused at the site of the hangar's forest decking. The area was large enough for 3 whole Thunderhawk gunships to berth, and 3/4 of it, if not more, was caked with blood. Lumps of torn flesh coated the floor like pebbles on the shore of the Isles of Iron. Splatters of viscera oozed down the walls. Chunks of what could have been heavy armor plate or weaponry were literally spread over the deck. All were a rich crimson, whether from the gore or the manner of which were originally painted. Bolve could not tell. Have your servatives get to work, Surf. Our battle leader needs this hangar fully operational in a matter of hours, said a voice behind Bolve. He jumped at the deep, vaguely metallic sound and turned around It was the Strike Force's Iron Priest, Bjorn Eisenfear. My apologies, Lord, he stammered, frantically pressing rune icons on his left wrist mounted keypad with his bionic right hand. He took a few steps forward into the hangar, and the servitors that lined the corridor behind him stomped out. The rhythmic clanking of their mechanical legs striking the iron deck echoed throughout the hangar, utterly unfazed by the hideous sight of the foul stench that was emanating from the oceans of drying viscera. They began to scour it off with sprays of sanctification oils that jetted out of enormous pressures from long snake-like hoses. Slowly, portions of the hangar floor began to resemble how it used to look before being so heavily befouled. I can scarcely imagine what happened here, Beauvais said, as much to himself as to the Iron Priest. As a serf of the Space Wolves who had served for 3 decades, he was used to seeing the sight of blood, but this was beyond anything he had ever seen. The traitors landed hundreds of the deranged cultists here, said Eisenfear. Maybe more. The word bearers sought to drown us in waves of their own human filth. They thought we were outnumbered and that they could seize Primarch's fang for their own. He chuckled. The brothers Berserk took umbrage at that notion, as you can see. Beauvais gaped. His eyes widened. The brothers Berserk? The triplets of boundless rage? The thrice-famed cursed? They are real? I believe them to be mere legend, Lord. Eisenfear stopped chuckling. They are real. Only rarely do we even stir one to wakefulness. To win this battle, to defend this vessel, the battle leader ordered all 3 awakened. That should tell you much. I have served this chapter for nearly 3 centuries, serf, and I have never witnessed such slaughter. Scores of the heretics were dead in the time it took me to blink. Where once frothing lunatics stood, baying for our blood and screaming out blasphemies, all that remained was gore. Their screams were blocked out by the brothers' howls. I swear the fury of the Primarch was upon them, for nothing else would surely match it. We were always going to win the battle, of course, but the brothers, they turned an invading army into this mess in minutes. That should give you a fair viewpoint of what Wolfen are like. They aren't really, they're monsters.
Excellent storytelling there. But if I'm correct anyways, those 3 anyways aren't just Wolfen, are they?
Yes,
they're also Dreadnought.
No.
No?
Those are just Wolfen.
Oh, what about that one that you told me about a few days ago? That was like a Wolfen and a Dreadnought.
Well, do you want me to talk about him first or about Dreadnoughts and then how they can be infected by Wolfen?
I don't care. You're gonna get to both, right?
Okay, so one of the things also about the Curse of Wolfen is, I guess, actually makes sense to first start with Dreadnoughts before I continue.
Okay.
So that we can briefly discuss, okay, this is how.
Yuksen, you're driving me crazy. Just get to it.
Dreadnoughts are essentially walking tanks. Within each dreadnought's adamantium shells lies the remains of a legend broken in body but not in mind, each determined to wage war against enemies. When a great hero of the Space Wolf finally meets his match, he is borne from the battlefield unto his funeral pyre by his brethren. Should there remain a tiny spark of his life in his broken and torn remains, the hero may tightly grasp the wrists of those who bear him and command them to cease. His last request, whispered through gore-spattered lips, is to be interred in the sarcophagus of a dreadnought so that he may claim vengeance and inscribe a new chapter of his saga in the blood of his enemies. So then they're taken to the Iron Priests, which are, want for another term, are tech priests.
Right. So dreadnoughts are just kind of like the greatest machines of war anyways for the Space Wolves?
They are, one for another term, they are basically when these guys, they're pretty much dead, but still
Toast.
have the will to go on. They're put in this armored sarcophagus, and it is installed into this dreadnought, which is basically a walking tank.
Right. And they're huge too, right? I mean, they're like
Yeah,
20 feet tall.
they're like 5 meters. A meter is roughly,
They're 5 meters. That's
yeah. So
15
they're
feet.
like 15 to 16 feet tall, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're pretty tall.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't bad enough, they give them these giant claws
Yeah.
and huge guns.
Yeah.
Hey,
But I mean, and you were telling me anyways that one of these giant, massive, hulking monsters actually has got a wolfen inside of it.
so one of the things that can happen though, since technically these space wolves still, even though that they are basically just stuffed in the sarcophagus and stuck in this machine,
Right.
they're still space wolves. So they
Right.
still have that curse. And so over times of sleep, they can actually come to be taken over by it.
That's
And
weird.
so there are actually wolfen dreadnoughts. And one in particular doesn't even really have a name. It's just known as the Murder Fang.
Of course. You could say a lot about the Space Wolves. Originality is probably not one of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he has this psychotic rage, anyways, that is known for Wolfen, but he's in a giant dreadnought suit.
He is basically, I mean, they become these like giant machines of destruction that suffer from the same thing as Wolfen. This guy's gotten to the point where basically, on top of being a feral dreadnought that just wants to murder everything, it's to the point where literally there is no line of possible berserk. It is constant berserk, constant homicidal, metallic rage, berserk. The only way that they keep this thing from just annihilating everything is by using Hellfrost technology to freeze its servos between battles.
Sounds like an interesting technology.
Yeah.
We might need to look into that, Yuksen. But hate to say it, but we have to press forward. And thank you, anyways, for telling about all these formations. I'm going to let you guys know, anyways, how they kind of work. Now, with the Codex Astartes, which the Space Wolves technically don't follow, everything is supposed to be broken up.
Technically, they don't follow it.
No. Wait a minute. Let me finish. You goob. Well, they don't follow it. They're like, we're going to come up with our own rules. Ironically, they're very similar to the Codex Astartes, what it dictates, which means small groups of fighting forces that are used anyways, like shock troops. Now, Yuksen, you may ask anyways, what is a shock troop?
Or not.
Or not, I guess. Okay. Well, I will tell you, regardless. A shock troop.
Just to add in there, the Codex Astartes isn't just focused around breaking down into small units.
Right.
You realize that, right?
But they fight very similar to every other Space Marine chapter.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are pretty close to the cut. Anyways.
Okay, so here's my hang on. Here is my understanding, anyways, of how they really differ. While they look at the Codex Astartes, they use them more like guidelines, as opposed to every other Space Marine chapter, which follows it rigidly. Does that make sense?
Yes, and the majority of it, yes.
Okay. I mean, like a good example of one thing that they don't follow is like, for instance, the cons. Well,
the chapter breakdown.
Yeah, that's a big one. The other thing, though, too, is that they don't, like most Space Marines, the concept of getting into hand-to-hand combat, while it is necessary to teach Space Marines to do that, it's not one of their like fortes. The Space Wolves love getting into hand-to-hand combat, and they like it in ways using like like they're hand-to-hand weapons. I mean, most of them anyways have like lightning claws and axes and swords. I mean, that's what they really love to use. Now, other chapters do use these weapons, but that's like the last thing that they do. Space Wolves like to get into it real quick. They still use anyways, very similar anyways to every other Space Marine chapter. They do use, I mean, like you said anyways, their roles are broken down differently, but they still like to use pack tactics. Now the Space Wolves will say anyways, well, we follow the way of the Fenrisian wolves, and we hunt as like small packs. That might be all well and good, but most other Space Marines do the same thing. They just don't call them packs. Now, the other thing I do want to talk about, which for those of you listening anyways, you'll find this completely unknown because the Imperium has stricken this from their records. But they have something that is also completely different from the Codex Astartes, and they're called Thunderwolf Cavalry. You know of which I speak of, correct, Yuksen?
Yes.
Yes. Thunderwolf. Okay, so first off, Thunderwolves are like Fenrisian wolves, but they're different. And how they're different, I mean, the biggest way of describing how they're different is that they're huge. They're about the size of a Terran 42 rhinoceros. They're massive. And the Space Wolves took a look at these guys and they said, hey, you know what? We could ride those into battle. How cool would that be? So they grabbed a bunch of these wolves. They broke them like they would horses, or other races would use horses, and they ride into battle on these giant Fenrisian wolves. Now, they use them significantly the same anyways as your average cavalry charge, except for they're faster than horses, and they're a whole lot meaner. And on top of that, just to make them interesting, they've also used their Iron Priests anyways to make their jaws adamantium, giving them bionics so that they can move faster in their joints. And the back jointed metal limbs, they end in razor sharp blades. Think wolf, turn it into the size of a rhinoceros, and then give it a mean attitude, armor shredding teeth, and spikes coming out of it. And then you have a Thunderwolf. And they ride these things into battle. There is one, I will say, there is one thing, one actual high caliber vid captured of a trio of space wolves riding into battle against a large mob of armored orcs. Needless to say, Yuksen, it did not turn out well for the orcs. But the guy who uses the most of these, though, his name is Harold Deathwolf. Now, he is one of the great lords of the Space Wolves. In fact, actually, you mind explaining to the fine people, anyways, how the Wolf Lords work?
So basically, Wolf Lords there's 12 of them. Technically,
13.
Well, there is a 13th company, which we will discuss later. But it doesn't really get recruits, so we aren't including it.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So these Wolf Lords are basically like Space Marines. They call them, other units call them captains. Except for in comparison to the Codex Astartes, these people are generally selected. Well, I think the other ones are also selected due to their prowess and their fellow colleagues, but they have, in comparison to the normal Codex Astartes, they choose basically how they want their companies to be run, companies or
which
their variation of a chapter. So, for example, like you're saying, Harold Deathwolf, he favors having more Thunderwolf cavalry.
Right.
Ragnar Blackmane, he focuses on having more Blood Claws.
Yeah.
The Great Company, run by the Grey Wolf, Logan Grimnar, the Great Wolf, Chapter Master, Wolf Guard. I mean,
you might have mentioned him a couple of times.
Yeah. Obviously, Wolf Guard, which we'll explain in a little bit. But
yeah, and Harold Deathwolf, he is, like you said, anyways. His company is designed, anyways, around these Thunderwolf cavalry. So they're quick hitting, they're fast. That's what he likes to do. He's been known, anyways, to one of the things that he's known for is that he's killed a lot of ice trolls. Uh, which, yeah, trolls do exist in this world too, and he killed quite a few of them. So just the concept of what he likes to do, anyways, is, I mean, we're, for those of you watching this on YouTube, I'll have a picture up of him. It's him on a wolf. He's got a big old axe in one hand and a giant shield in the other. He loves riding into battle, anyways. He is a cavalry commander. It's probably the best way to describe him. But he's not alone. He actually has his right hand is also quite famous. You know who I'm talking about there, Yuksen?
I assume you're talking about Canis Wolfborn?
Yeah. I mean, you got to get into him. I mean, he's known as the Lord of Wolves.
And rightly so. One of the things about Canis Wolfborn is he is actually one of the only one recorded as having been basically, quite literally, raised by wolves.
No. That's not true. There was this other guy. We talked about him. We had a whole Vox about him.
Let me be more specific.
A gentleman by the name of Lehman Russ.
He is the only one to be raised by wolves and wasn't even came really into any sort of human contact, let's say human interaction, other than until he came across the Space Wolves.
Okay.
In comparison to Lehman Russ, who, yes, he was raised by wolves, but he also ended up becoming a war chief, and then he ended up becoming leader of the Space Wolves. He went directly from being raised by wolves to becoming a Space Wolf.
No. He was taken from the wolves, anyways, by the Space Wolves, and then raised by the Space Wolves.
That's what I just said.
No, you just like all of a sudden he went poof, and now he's a Space Wolf. It's like anyway. The way you described it, it's like the wolves dropped him off at the Fang and it's like, all right, son, see you later. And he just all of a sudden got initiated and poof, he's a Space Wolf. He still was raised by humans after he was raised by wolves, very much like Lehman Russ. I think we're getting into semantics here.
Yes.
Sorry. Carry on.
Something that you claim that you don't like.
Huh?
I may add.
I see. Yeah. Sorry. Carry on.
The first time that he was really encountered was by Jorek the Giant when he went on a lone hunt. He was one of the chosen by the wolf priests, and he was hunting down some Fenrisian wolves. Thought that he had about to pounce on a alpha male of the pack. A long-limbed human slammed into him and pitched him over the edge of the cave roof into the wolves.
Didn't go well for him, did it?
No. He had a fleeting impression of wild eyes, blood-caked fingernails, and mad hair before he was thoroughly beaten until unconsciousness.
So you're telling me a normal human being beat to a pulp a Space Wolf known as the Giant?
Yes.
Wow. That's impressive. Very impressive.
And he
How did he live?
Returned to the Fang, but not really the way he hoped, since he was dragged by the heel across the wastelands by Canis. I just had this visual image of this guy going, "Oh, why me?" And then coming to the front door of the people that you're just like, I worship these people, and I have to come back black and blue.
And then they go, what did this? What giant chaotic being did this? And you're like, a little person.
And then being dragged by this little tiny person, basically, by the heel up to these guys. And what are you going to do? Just look up and go, hi? I mean...
Why didn't Canis kill him? That's a story for another time. But
Yeah, actually, and another thing that's amazing about this story is the fact that Canis actually was able to track him over this giant distance all the way back to the thing. So it
right,
wasn't just, oh yeah, the thing was right next door. No, it was like miles away.
right. It's
And so he shows up in front of the things. He howls. His fellow wolves, which were with him, by the way, also howl, bringing out Harold Deathwolf.
right. And if I recall right, Harold Deathwolf ends up dueling with Canis Wolfborn.
Yes.
And while honestly, Harold was pretty impressed, if I recall right. He ends up beating him.
Yeah.
It takes him a while, but he ends up beating him, and eventually Canis actually like leans forward like a wolf does, anyways, to show his neck and submittance. And
Well,
Harold,
which makes sense since he hasn't really had any human interaction. In fact, he wasn't even able to communicate really with
Harold,
Harold to begin with.
right? But Harold, anyways, seeing anyways the potential, anyways, of such a mighty warrior, grabs him anyways, takes him into the fang, and post haste turns him into a space wolf.
Yeah.
And to this day, he is still Harold's right hand man. He is known as the Lord of Wolves because all wolves seem to follow him. They see him as the true alpha. While Logan Grimnar, on the other hand, is the leader of the Space Wolves, Canis Wolfborn is kind of known as the Lord of the Wolves themselves, the Fenris Wolves. And everywhere he goes, anyways, he's like surrounded by this giant pack. It's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
But okay, so we're actually kind of running out of time here. We do have a couple other people that we do need to talk about. Specifically Arjak Rockfist and then Najal Stormcaller. And then I think we'll have to call it a day.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead, Yuksen, and tell us about Arjak Rockfist.
Okay, so Arjak Rockfist has the name of the Man Mountain, Grimnar's champion, and Anvil of Fenris. This guy is formerly an Iron Priest, which, should point out what Iron Priests are now, I guess. Iron Priests are Tech Marines, aka the Space Marines versions of mechanics and forge masters.
Right.
Easiest way to put it.
So they kind of take all the stuff that the Adeptus Mechanicus makes for every Space Marine chapter, and then they like customize it, right? For the
Customize it or fix it or make
right.
adjustments. They're also the people that, like mentioned before, that set up the dreadnoughts to put the people in.
Right.
They're the techs.
Right.
They're
like souped up battle engineers. Great.
exactly.
Great.
So, Arjak, he's bigger than Grimnar, which is saying something. He's bigger, he's broader. He's just this, kind of like the name Man Mountain.
Hold up. What? He's bigger than Grimnar? Grimnar is like huge. He's known as like this big bear of a man. He's about the size of a bear. And you're saying this guy is even bigger than he is?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. It's kind of impressive.
The first time he's really, really shown as a warrior and not an Iron Priest was when some Kraken spawn. Yes, they have Kraken on Fenris, by the way. For anybody who knows what Kraken are.
Release the Kraken. Sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Release the Kraken. And so there's a case where 1,000 Kraken spawn boiled out of the seas. And him and like several other warriors basically stood in the way of this massive outwall trying to stop them from getting to these people as they escaped.
I could just see
Brothers.
I could just hear them. So many tentacles. Sorry.
So by the time that anybody else was able to get there, pretty much everybody in the rear guard that was just there basically to just block the way as long as possible. Arjak was the only one there still, and he was still fighting to the best of his ability, just still slaughtering everything basically.
A lot of sushi.
Yes. A lot of oh crap. Anyways,
Is that when Grimnar decided to bring him in as his wolf, part of his wolf guard?
So after seeing this, yeah, basically they ended up finding him, and he was pretty close to death by the time they found it. Don't get me wrong. He was
Too many tentacles.
He just barely made it back from this. But yeah, Grimnar saw, obviously this guy shouldn't be Iron Priest. This guy has to be a warrior. He has to be part of my wolf guard. In fact,
not only that, but he brought him a whole boatload of calamari. I mean, that sounds fantastic.
I mean, he brought him to the point that he is actually considered the champion of Grimnar. So he's the champion of
the Wolf Guard.
The
Space Wolves, actually.
The Space Wolves.
Yeah. Now, I've mentioned a couple times anyways the Wolf Guard. Could you please explain to the people that are listening what the Wolf Guard actually is?
Okay, so the Wolf Guard is basically the elite of the elites for whichever wolf lord they're following. So they will be like, for example, kind of sort of explained it with that. They would be like the chosen few for the Lord.
Yeah, they're like his personal guard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personal guard, or the personal chosen people, not necessarily his guard, but his personal chosen.
Right. And every wolf lord, if I recall right, actually has a unit of this, right?
Yes.
But Logan's, anyways, are like the cream of the crop.
Obviously, I mean, he is the Great Wolf, the chapter master, the Great Wolf.
So yeah, not only that, but if I recall right, anyways, all Wolf Guard are in Terminator armor, correct?
Not necessarily.
Really? I thought they all were.
They are like basically one of the only units of Space Wolves that are able to wear Terminator armor, because as we've discussed before, Terminator armor is rare.
Right.
So they are actually given the option of wearing this. Not all of them do, but
interesting. Now, I would love to go more into the Wolf Guard, but we really are running out of time, Yuksen. Could you briefly give us? We have to end this box anyways, talking about Njal Stormcaller, the mighty rune priest of the Space Wolves, the leader of the rune priest, if I recall right.
Yes, he is the High Rune Priest.
Ooh. They don't just call him the High. It's got to be what? The High Wolf Rune Priest. They have to add the wolf in there because they're Space Wolves. That's what they do. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. Carry on.
He is the chief of the most arcane order of priesthoods within the Space Wolves chapter. He's also known as the Storm That Walks.
That's pretty cool, actually.
He is the Storm That Walks, for where he fights, there does the Tempest rage fiercest. He is, also known basically as the Lord of Tempests. He takes fierce delight in summoning ice-toothed blizzards and howling gales, which to scatter and destroy those who stand in his path.
Imagine how scary that would be if they were on, like, for instance, a desert planet. All of a sudden, this guy shows up and starts shooting razor hail at the enemy. They wouldn't even know what it was.
He has a forked beard and flame red hair. He has a rune-encrusted staff with a wolf skull mounted on top of it. And he has fought with such fury, even full-blood warriors have feared to face him. This guy isn't like your normal librarian priest going, I cast psychic magic. He is a holy crap. This is a force of nature. This isn't a person.
So he is the storm.
Lee.
And he runs the rune priest, correct?
Yes, he is the high rune priest, so he would be, yeah, basically.
So if he's this powerful, why isn't he the Great Wolf?
Because the Great Wolf is, from what I can recall, a warrior selected amongst the Wolf Guard generally of the prior Wolf Lord.
Oh, okay.
And rune priests aren't really Wolf Guard.
Right. But, I mean, okay, if you got this guy that's this powerful, why isn't the most powerful person your leader?
Because, like, I'm not sure if this is true about every chapter, but one of the things that has been learned through the Space Wolves is you cannot trust
Psychers.
The warp.
Which also does beg the question, anyways. Why do the Space Wolves even have rune priests? I mean, I understand that they're super powerful, but at the same time, out of all the Space Marine chapters, if I recall right, the Space Wolves distrust Psychers the most. It's one of the problems Lehman Russ had with.
You're forgetting the Black Templar.
No, I'm not.
Yes, the Black Templar don't even have them.
Oh, okay, fine, but still. That's why I'm asking the question, why on earth did the Space Wolves actually have Psychers? They hate Psychers. That's why one of the reasons they had a problem with 1,000 Suns.
And yet they utilize them because they see use in them. They do not see them, though, as being like the save all. But
at the same time, Yuksen, it doesn't make any sense. I mean,
I have to say, we are done with this week. My apologies, but we are out of time.
Yeah, okay, Yuksen. I can see that. But tell me, what are we going to be talking about next week?
Well, obviously, we have our questions and answers from those who have been listening.
Obviously. Well, what else are we going to talk about?
Well, I figured we would discuss how Space Wolves fit in with the rest of the Empire.
That's not a bad idea. Although, if I might make a suggestion, I think that we also have to talk about Lone Wolves, as well as Bolvi the Berserker, obviously, and the 13th chapter. We kind of hinted about it so many times in this box. We do have to talk about them, too.
Right.
All right. Well, very well, then. I'm in.
Huzzah! I guess we should sign off now until next week.
Yes, brother. But for those of you listening, don't forget we will be answering questions in the comments at www.asheraka.com or wherever you're listening from, other than Audible. It's its own can of worms. But until next week, this is Zeckthar.
And Yuksen.
Signing off.